The ring felt heavier in Adrian Vance's coat pocket than a simple band of silver should, and with every jolting step his horse took along the muddy frontier road, he felt the weight of his mother's dying wish pressing against his ribs like an accusation he could never answer. He had been riding for 3 days since leaving the garrison at Milford, where his enlistment had finally ended after 6 brutal years of service along the borderlands. The wars with the Orc clans were supposedly over, though Adrian had seen enough burned villages and mass graves on both sides to know that hatred did not evaporate with the signing of treaties. His mother had written him letters throughout those years, her handwriting growing shakier with each one, begging him to come home, to settle down, to find a good woman and give her grandchildren before she departed this world. The final letter had arrived 4 months ago, delivered by a Sommer courier who told him his mother had passed peacefully in her sleep. Inside the envelope, wrapped in a scrap of blue cloth, had been her wedding ring and a note that simply read, "Find someone to love as your father loved me." Adrian was 26 now, weathered beyond his years, with scars that mapped a geography of violence across his back and arms. He had no home to return to. The small farm where he had grown up had been sold to pay his mother's debts. He had nowhere to go and no one waiting for him, just a ring that did not belong to him and a promise he had no idea how to keep. The rain started as a drizzle around midday and quickly became a downpour that turned the road into a river of mud. Adrian's horse, a stolid bay gelding named Copper, began to struggle, his hooves slipping dangerously. Through the curtain of rain, Adrian spotted what looked like an old barn leaning drunkenly against the gray sky. It was set back from the road, half hidden by overgrown thorn bushes, clearly abandoned. He guided Copper toward it, desperate for shelter. The barn door hung crooked on broken hinges. Adrian dismounted and led Copper inside, immediately grateful to be out of the relentless rain. The interior was dim and smelled of rotted hay and old wood, but it was dry. He was unsaddling Copper when he heard it, a low, pained groan from somewhere in the shadows at the back of the barn. Every instinct from 6 years of military service kicked in. Adrian's hand went to the sword at his hip as he turned slowly toward the sound. His eyes adjusted to the gloom, and he saw a figure huddled in the corner, barely visible among the debris of broken farming equipment. "Who is there?" Adrian called out, his voice steady despite the sudden hammering of his heart. Another groan, weaker this time. Adrian took a cautious step forward, then another. As he drew closer, details emerged from the shadows that made his breath catch in his chest: green skin, pointed ears, the distinctive shape of small tusks protruding from a slack mouth. An orc. Adrian's first instinct was to draw his weapon. 6 years of training, of fighting, of seeing his brothers in arms cut down by orc warriors screamed at him to protect himself. But as his vision sharpened, he saw that this orc was female, and she was badly injured. A crude arrow shaft protruded from her shoulder, broken off close to the skin. Dark blood, nearly black in the dim light, stained the torn remains of her leather vest. Her breathing was shallow and rapid, her eyes closed. She was dying. Adrian stood frozen, his hand still on his sword hilt. This was an orc. The enemy. The monsters he had spent 6 years fighting. It would be easy to turn around, to pretend he had never seen her, to let nature take its course. But as he stared at her, he saw something that made his throat tighten. She was young, probably close to his own age. Her face, though bearing the distinctive features of her race, held a delicate quality that surprised him. Her black hair was braided intricately, though the braids were now matted with mud and blood, and around her neck, on a leather cord, hung what looked like small carved wooden beads, each one different. Personal. Cherished. She was a person, not just an orc. And she was dying alone in an abandoned barn. Adrian released his sword and knelt beside her. Her eyes fluttered open at his approach, and he found himself staring into irises of startling amber. Fear flashed across her face, and she tried to move away, gasping in pain. "Easy," Adrian said, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I am not going to hurt you." She stared at him, her breathing ragged, clearly not believing him. Why would she? Humans and orcs had been killing each other for generations. "You have an arrow in your shoulder," Adrian continued, keeping his voice calm and level. "If it is not removed and the wound treated, you will die. Will you let me help you?" The orc woman's eyes searched his face, looking for deception, for cruelty. Finally, with what seemed like enormous effort, she gave a tiny nod. Adrian moved carefully, aware that she was watching his every movement. He had basic field medicine training from his military service. He had treated arrow wounds before, though never on an orc. He hoped the anatomy was similar enough. He built a small fire first, using scraps of dry wood from the barn's interior and his flint striker. The light and warmth filled the space, pushing back the gloom. The orc woman watched him through half-closed eyes, her breathing still labored. "This is going to hurt," Adrian warned as he examined the arrow. It had gone in deep, probably puncturing muscle, but he did not think it had hit anything vital or she would already be dead. "I need to remove the arrowhead. Do you understand?" She nodded again, then spoke for the first time. "Do it." Her voice was rough, accented, but the common tongue was clear enough. Adrian had a small flask of strong spirits in his saddlebag. He retrieved it along with his medical kit, which contained bandages, needle and thread, and a few precious pouches of healing herbs his mother had sent him years ago. He offered the flask to the orc woman first. "Drink," he said. "It will help with the pain." She took it with a trembling hand and drank deeply, coughing slightly at the burn. Then she handed it back and braced herself against the barn wall. What followed was brutal. Adrian had to cut away the flesh around the arrow to extract the head without causing more damage. The orc woman, whose name he still did not know, bit down on a piece of leather and made barely a sound, though tears streamed down her green-skinned face, and her body shook with the effort of staying still. When the arrowhead finally came free, bloody and wicked-looking, Adrian felt almost as exhausted as she looked. He cleaned the wound as best he could, packed it with herbs his mother had sworn prevented infection, and stitched it closed with careful precision. Through it all, the orc woman stayed conscious, her amber eyes fixed on his face with an expression he could not read. When he finally tied off the bandage, she slumped against the wall, her strength clearly spent. "Thank you," she whispered. "What is your name?" Adrian asked. She hesitated, then said, "Grishka. I am Adrian." He sat back on his heels, suddenly aware of how strange this situation was. He was tending to an orc's wounds. If any of his former comrades could see him now, they would think he had lost his mind. Maybe he had. "Why?" Grishka asked, her eyes searching his again. "Why help me?" Adrian was quiet for a moment, thinking about his mother's ring, about 6 years of violence, about being so tired of death. "Because you needed help," he said finally, "and because I am tired of killing." Something shifted in her expression, not quite trust, but perhaps the beginning of it. "Rest," Adrian told her. "The rain is not stopping anytime soon. We will be here for the night." He moved back to tend to Copper, giving Grishka space. As he brushed down his horse and sorted through his supplies, he could feel her watching him. The rain continued to hammer against the barn's roof, a steady drumbeat that somehow felt less lonely with another living soul nearby. even if that soul belonged to someone he had been trained to hate. Night fell early, swallowed by storm clouds. Adrian made a simple meal from his rations: hard bread, dried meat, and some wrinkled apples. He offered half to Grishka, who accepted with visible surprise. "You share food with me too?" she asked, her tone incredulous. "We are both hungry," Adrian said simply. "Both human. I am orc," she pointed out. "You are still a person who needs to eat." They ate in silence for a while, the fire crackling between them. The barn felt almost cozy now, a small pocket of warmth and light in the midst of the storm. Adrian found himself studying Grishka when he thought she was not looking. Despite her injuries and obvious exhaustion, there was a strength to her that he found intriguing. She held herself with dignity, even in this terrible situation. "How did you get shot?" Adrian asked eventually. Grishka's jaw tightened. "Hunters, human hunters. They track orcs who travel alone, sell our tusks and teeth as trophies." She touched her small tusks self-consciously. "I was traveling to find work. I am a leather worker, good with my hands. I thought if I stayed away from the villages, kept to the wild roads, I would be safe. I was wrong." Anger flared in Adrian's chest. The war was over. There were supposed to be treaties, protections. But he knew better than most that laws meant little in the frontier, where old hatreds ran deep and justice was whatever the person with the weapon decided it was. "I am sorry," he said, and meant it. Grishka looked at him with those unsettling amber eyes. "You are strange for a human." "You fought in the wars." 6 years, Adrian admitted. "I just finished my service." "You killed orcs." It was not a question. Adrian met her gaze steadily. "Yes, I did, and orcs killed humans. We were soldiers following orders, doing what we thought was necessary to survive. I am not proud of it, but I cannot change the past." "No," Grishka agreed quietly. "We cannot change the past, only choose what we do now." "And what will you do now?" Adrian asked. "Where were you going?" "There is a settlement," Grishka said, 3 days west, mixed races. Orcs, humans, even some dwarves. They say it is a place where the old hatreds matter less, where you are judged by your work and your word, not your tusks. I was trying to reach it. On foot. I had a horse. The hunters took it." Bitterness crept into her voice. "Took everything. My tools, my supplies, left me to die." Adrian made a decision that probably was not wise but felt right anyway. "When you are strong enough to travel, I will take you there." Grishka stared at him. "Why would you do that?" "Because you need help," Adrian said again. "And because I have nowhere else to be. And maybe because helping you feels like a way to balance some of the harm I have done." "You cannot balance war with kindness," Grishka said, but her voice was softer. "But I accept your help. Thank you, Adrian Vance." He smiled slightly. "Just Adrian is fine." They talked a little more as the fire burned down, careful conversations that skirted around the deeper wounds they both carried. Adrian learned that Grishka was 23, that she had been apprenticed to her grandmother, who was a master leather worker, that she had lost most of her family in the wars. Grishka learned that Adrian was alone in the world now, that he had been a farmer's son before he was a soldier, that he carried his mother's wedding ring and had no idea what to do with it. Eventually, exhaustion claimed them both. Adrian added more wood to the fire and settled down with his saddle as a pillow, his sword within easy reach out of habit. Across the fire, Grishka had already fallen into an uneasy sleep, her wounded shoulder carefully positioned. Adrian lay awake for a long time, listening to the rain and the sound of her breathing, wondering what he had gotten himself into. The rain continued through the next day, keeping them trapped in the barn. Adrian used the time to tend to Grishka's wound, changing the bandage and checking for signs of infection. Her orc constitution seemed strong. The wound was already beginning to close, though it would be days before she could travel. They talked more as the hours passed, initially awkward but gradually more comfortable. Grishka told him about leatherworking, about the precision it required, the patience. She described the feel of good leather under her hands, the satisfaction of creating something beautiful and functional. Adrian found himself fascinated by her passion for her craft. In turn, he told her about farming, about the rhythm of seasons and the quiet satisfaction of coaxing life from soil. He admitted that he had never wanted to be a soldier, that he had enlisted because the pay would help his ailing mother, that he had stayed because leaving felt like abandoning his comrades, that he had no idea who he was now that the war was over. "You are someone who helps wounded strangers in barns," Grishka offered with a hint of humor. "That is something." "Is it enough?" Adrian asked. "I do not know," Grishka said honestly, "but it is a start." On the third day, the rain finally stopped. Weak sunlight filtered through cracks in the barn walls. Grishka was stronger, able to stand and move around slowly, though her shoulder was still tender and her movements careful. "We should leave tomorrow," Adrian said. "If you feel strong enough." Grishka nodded. "I am ready." "Staying here longer risks the hunters finding us. They may come back to check if I survived." The thought sent a chill down Adrian's spine. He checked his weapons, making sure everything was ready. That night, as they sat by the fire for what would be the last time in the barn, Grishka reached up and removed one of the wooden beads from the cord around her neck. She held it out to Adrian. "What is this?" he asked. "A gift," Grishka said. "Among my people, when someone saves your life, you owe them a debt. This bead is carved with the symbol of my clan. If you ever need help, show it to any orc who knows the old ways, and they will aid you." Adrian took the bead carefully. It was small and smooth, carved with intricate geometric patterns he could barely make out in the firelight. "Thank you," he said, "but you do not owe me anything." "I owe you everything," Grishka said quietly. "You could have killed me, you could have left me to die. Instead, you saved me, fed me, treated me with kindness I have never received from a human. That is a debt I will not forget." Adrian closed his fingers around the bead, feeling the weight of her words. "Then I will treasure this, and I hope we can be friends, not debtor and creditor." Grishka's tusked smile was small but genuine. "Friends? Yes, I would like that." They set out at dawn the next morning, Grishka riding behind Adrian on Copper. The horse handled the extra weight without complaint, though Adrian kept the pace slow to accommodate Grishka's injury. She sat pressed against his back out of necessity, her good arm loosely around his waist to keep her balance. The proximity was strange at first, intimate in a way that made Adrian acutely aware of every breath, every movement. But as the miles passed and the day grew warmer, the awkwardness faded into something almost comfortable. Grishka would occasionally point out landmarks or tell him stories about the land they were traveling through. Adrian shared his own observations, the skills of reading terrain that he had learned in the military proving useful for finding the safest paths. They camped that night in a small grove of oak trees, far enough from the road to avoid casual notice. Adrian shot a rabbit with his bow, and Grishka showed him how to prepare it the way her people did, with wild herbs she foraged from the edges of the grove. The meat was surprisingly delicious. "You are a good cook," Adrian said appreciatively. "A necessary skill when you travel alone," Grishka replied. "Though I will admit, it is nicer to cook for two." Something in the way she said it made Adrian's chest feel warm. He found himself watching her in the firelight, noting the way the flames turned her green skin almost golden, the way her tusks caught the light when she smiled. She was beautiful, he realized, not in spite of being an orc, but just beautiful, full stop. The realization unsettled him. He should not be having such thoughts. She was an orc. He was human. They were from different worlds, shaped by a history of violence between their peoples. Anything beyond friendship was impossible. But as he lay down to sleep that night, listening to the sound of her steady breathing from across the fire, Adrian could not quite convince himself that impossible meant the same thing as unwanted. They traveled for 3 more days, falling into an easy rhythm. Each night, they would make camp and share the work of setting up, cooking, and keeping watch. They talked about everything and nothing, careful conversations at first that gradually deepened. Grishka told him about losing her father in a border raid when she was 12, about her mother dying of a sickness 2 years later, about being raised by her grandmother who was fierce and demanding and loving. Adrian shared his own losses, his father's death when he was young, his mother's slow decline, the weight of being the last of his family line. "We are both orphans," Grishka observed one evening, "both alone in the world. Perhaps that is why it feels easy to talk to you," Adrian said. "You understand." "Yes," Grishka agreed softly. "I understand." On the 6th day of their journey, they crested a hill and saw the settlement spread out in the valley below. It was larger than Adrian had expected, with perhaps 200 buildings clustered around a central square. Fields stretched out in neat rows, and he could see figures moving about, too distant to identify their race. Smoke rose from chimneys in lazy spirals against the afternoon sky. "There," Grishka said, and he could hear the relief in her voice. "Crossroads. That is its name. We made it." They descended the hill and approached the settlement as the sun began to sink toward the horizon. As they drew closer, Adrian could see that Grishka had been right about the mixed population. He spotted green-skinned orcs working alongside brown-skinned humans, a group of stocky dwarves hauling timber, even a tall figure that might have been an elf, though he could not be sure at this distance. The town had a different feel from the human settlements Adrian had known. Less rigid, more chaotic, but somehow more alive. Buildings were a mix of architectural styles, as if each race had contributed their own methods and preferences. The result should have been jarring, but instead it felt vibrant, welcoming. They rode through the outskirts, drawing curious glances but no hostility. An orc woman hanging laundry nodded to Grishka. A human child waved at Adrian. It was surreal after years of rigid us versus them mentality. Grishka directed Adrian to a building near the center of town, a sturdy structure with a sign that read the Crossroads Inn in 3 different scripts. They dismounted, and Adrian helped Grishka down, mindful of her still healing shoulder. "I will see about a room," Adrian said. "You should rest." But Grishka caught his arm. "Adrian, I do not have money. The hunters took everything. I cannot pay for lodging." "I have enough for both of us," Adrian assured her. "Do not worry about it." "You have already done so much," Grishka protested. "I cannot ask you to keep providing for me." "You are not asking. I am offering." Adrian smiled at her. "What are friends for?" The word friends felt insufficient for what they had become over the past week, but Adrian did not know what else to call it. Grishka seemed to sense the same inadequacy, but she nodded and followed him inside. The innkeeper was a dwarf woman with an impressive beard braided with copper wire. She looked them over with shrewd eyes, but asked no questions beyond how long they needed rooms. 2 rooms, Adrian said, and tried to ignore the small flicker of disappointment he felt at saying it. 3 nights to start. The dwarf named a price that was reasonable. Adrian paid, and they were shown to adjacent rooms on the 2nd floor. The accommodations were simple but clean, each with a bed, a washstand, and a window overlooking the main street. "Meet you downstairs for dinner," Adrian suggested. Grishka nodded. Give me an hour to wash and make myself presentable. An hour later, they reconvened in the inn's common room. Grishka had cleaned up and rebraided her hair, and she wore a fresh shirt that she must have borrowed or bought. Adrian had done the same, shaving and changing into his least travel-worn clothes. They found a table in the corner and ordered the house stew, which turned out to be a hearty mix of meat and vegetables that reminded Adrian painfully of his mother's cooking. As they ate, they watched the other patrons. The common room was busy with the dinner crowd, and the mix of races was even more apparent here. Humans and orcs sat at adjacent tables, drinking and laughing. A dwarf arm wrestled a human to the cheers of onlookers. It was like stepping into a different world, one where the war had never happened. "This place is remarkable," Adrian said quietly. "It is what the world could be," Grishka replied, "if we chose to make it so." An older human man approached their table, his weathered face friendly. "New to Crossroads, just arrived," Adrian confirmed. "I am Adrian Vance. This is Grishka. Welcome. I am Thomas, one of the town council. We like to greet newcomers, make sure they understand how things work here." He pulled up a chair without asking and sat. "First rule. We do not care what you are, we care who you are. Your race, your history, what you did before you came here, none of that matters. What matters is how you treat people and whether you pull your weight. Second rule. Old grudges stay outside town limits. Humans and orcs have problems elsewhere in the world, that is their business. Here in Crossroads, we are all just people trying to make a life. Can you live with those rules?" "Yes," Adrian said immediately, and Grishka nodded her agreement. "Good." Thomas looked at Grishka. "I heard we had a leatherworker coming. That you?" "Yes," Grishka said, surprise evident in her voice. "How did you know? You sent a letter 2 months back asking about work opportunities. We have been hoping you would make it. We have got exactly one leatherworker in town, and he is 70 years old and wants to retire. We need someone who can make and repair harnesses, saddles, boots, all of it. If you are any good, you will have more work than you can handle." Grishka's face lit up with an expression of pure joy that made Adrian's heart skip. "I am good. Very good. My grandmother trained me from childhood. Excellent. Come by the council hall tomorrow and we will get you set up with a workshop space. There is an empty building on the east side that should work perfectly." Thomas turned to Adrian. "What about you? What skills do you have?" Adrian hesitated. "I was a farmer, then a soldier. Now I am between things." "Can you farm here?" Thomas asked. "We always need people who know how to coax food from the ground. We have got land available for homesteading, good soil, access to water." The offer was tempting, more tempting than Adrian wanted to admit. A place to put down roots, a purpose. But he could not help glancing at Grishka, wondering if she would want him to stay or if their time together had been just a temporary alliance, ended now that she had reached her destination. "I will think about it," Adrian said. "You do that." Thomas stood and clapped Adrian on the shoulder. "Meanwhile, enjoy Crossroads, and welcome." After he left, Grishka looked at Adrian with those penetrating amber eyes. "You should stay." "Should I?" Adrian asked, his heart suddenly beating faster. "You have nowhere else to go," Grishka pointed out practically. "And this is a good place. A place where we could both start over. She had said we. Adrian felt a fragile hope unfurling in his chest. "Then I will stay," he said. "At least for a while, see how it suits me." Grishka's smile was radiant. "Good, that is good." They finished their dinner and talked until the common room began to empty. Eventually, they climbed the stairs to their rooms, pausing in the hallway between their doors. "Thank you," Grishka said, "for everything. For saving my life, for bringing me here, for being so kind when you had every reason not to be." "You do not need to keep thanking me," Adrian said. "I wanted to help you." "Why?" Grishka asked, echoing her question from the barn, but this time her tone was different. Not suspicious, but genuinely curious. Searching, Adrian thought about his answer carefully. At first, because it was the right thing to do, because I was tired of death and you were dying. But now, he trailed off, not quite ready to put his feelings into words. Now, Grishka prompted softly. Now because you are my friend, Adrian said. Because I care about what happens to you. Because these past days, traveling with you, talking with you, I have been happier than I have been in years. Grishka stepped closer, close enough that Adrian could see the flecks of gold in her amber eyes. I have been happy too, she said. Happier than I thought possible after everything I have lost. You make me feel safe, Adrian. You make me feel seen. The air between them felt charged, full of possibility and danger in equal measure. Adrian wanted to close the distance, to find out if her tusked mouth would feel strange or wonderful against his. But fear held him back. Fear of rejection, of ruining what they had, of the impossibility of them. Grishka seemed to sense his hesitation. She reached out and squeezed his hand gently. Good night, Adrian. Good night, Grishka. They retreated to their separate rooms, but Adrian lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, thinking about green skin and amber eyes and a smile that made his heart race. The next morning, Grishka met with the town council and was formally set up in the old leather shop. Adrian went with her, helping to clean out the space and organize the basic tools the previous owner had left behind. The workshop was perfect for her, with good light, a large work table, and storage for materials. Grishka moved through the space with obvious delight, already planning where everything would go. The council is giving me a small stipend to get started, she told Adrian excitedly. Enough to buy leather and basic supplies. I can start taking commissions within a week. That is wonderful, Adrian said and meant it, but he felt a strange ache in his chest, watching her settle into her new life. She did not need him anymore. She had her workshop, her trade, a place in the community. What did she need with a rootless ex-soldier who could not even decide what he wanted from his own life? As if reading his thoughts, Grishka turned to him. You will help me, will you not? Getting set up, of course, Adrian said. For as long as you need me. Something flickered in Grishka's eyes. What if I need you longer than just getting set up? Adrian's breath caught. What do you mean? Grishka set down the leather strap she had been examining and moved closer to him. I mean that I do not want you to leave. I mean that when I think about my future here, you are in it. I mean that I am not ready to say goodbye to you, and I do not know if I ever will be. Grishka, Adrian said, his voice rough. You know what people would say. A human and an orc together, it is not done. The prejudice, the judgment. There is prejudice and judgment everywhere, Grishka interrupted. But here in Crossroads, maybe we have a chance. Maybe here we can be whatever we choose to be. She took his hand, her green fingers intertwining with his. I care about you, Adrian, more than is probably wise. More than I ever thought I could care about anyone, let alone a human. But I do. And I think maybe you care about me too. I do, Adrian admitted, the words spilling out. God help me, I do. I think about you constantly. You are brave and kind and beautiful, and being with you feels right in a way nothing has felt right in years. But I am afraid. Afraid of what wanting you means. Afraid of whether we can actually make this work. We will not know unless we try, Grishka said. She raised her other hand to his face, her touch gentle. And I want to try, Adrian. If you do. For an answer, Adrian leaned down and kissed her. Her lips were warm and soft, her small tusks pressing lightly against his own mouth in a way that was strange and thrilling. She made a small sound of surprise and pleasure, her good arm coming up to wrap around his neck, pulling him closer. The kiss was tentative at first, an exploration, learning the shape and taste of each other. Then it deepened, becoming something more urgent, more necessary. Adrian felt like he was falling and flying at the same time, his whole world narrowing down to the feel of Grishka in his arms, the way she fit against him despite their differences. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Grishka was smiling. "So we are trying this." "We are trying this," Adrian confirmed. "Whatever this is, a relationship," Grishka said firmly. "Courting, whatever humans call it when two people are exploring whether they want to spend their lives together, that is what I want with you." "That is what I want too," Adrian said. "Even though I have no idea how to do it properly. I have never courted anyone before." "Neither have I," Grishka admitted. "But perhaps we can figure it out together." "Together," Adrian agreed and kissed her again because he could now, because she wanted him to, because they were going to try. The next weeks passed in a blur of hard work and stolen moments. Adrian took Thomas up on his offer and accepted a homestead claim, a plot of land about 2 miles from town with good soil and a small creek running through it. The land came with a tiny, run-down cabin that needed extensive repairs, but Adrian threw himself into the work with enthusiasm. It felt good to build something, to have a purpose again. Grishka established herself quickly as Crossroads leatherworker. Her skill was immediately apparent, and soon she had a waiting list of commissions. She worked long hours, determined to prove herself and repay the council's faith in her. But despite their busy schedules, Adrian and Grishka made time for each other. Adrian would stop by her workshop in the evenings, and they would walk through town together, talking about their days. Sometimes Grishka would ride out to Adrian's homestead on a horse she had bought with her first earnings, and she would help him with repairs while they planned how the farm would look once it was properly established. Their relationship deepened slowly, carefully. They held hands in public, which drew some stares but fewer than Adrian had feared. They shared meals and stories and lingering kisses that left them both wanting more but uncertain of the next step. It was courtship in the truest sense, a gradual building of intimacy and trust. One evening, about a month after they had arrived in Crossroads, Adrian and Grishka were sitting on the porch of his half-repaired cabin, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Grishka was leaning against him, her head on his shoulder, and Adrian had his arm around her waist. It felt perfect, peaceful, like this was where they both belonged. "I have been thinking," Grishka said quietly. "About what?" "About the future. About what we are building here." She paused, then continued. "In my culture, when two people decide they want to be together permanently, there is a ceremony, an exchange of tokens that represent the commitment. It is not exactly like human marriage, but similar." Adrian's heart started racing. "Are you saying?" "I am saying that I know what I want," Grishka said, turning to look at him directly. "I want you, Adrian. I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up next to you and work alongside you and grow old with you. I know it has only been a few months, but I have never been more certain of anything." Adrian felt overwhelmed by the intensity of his own emotions. "I want that too, all of it. But Grishka, I have to tell you something first." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his mother's ring. In the fading light, the silver gleamed softly. "This was my mother's wedding ring," Adrian explained. "She left it to me with a note saying I should find someone to love the way my father loved her. I have been carrying it since she died, wondering if I would ever find that person. And then I found you." Grishka stared at the ring, her expression unreadable. "You want to give me your mother's ring?" "I want to marry you," Adrian said, the words tumbling out now. "I know we come from different worlds. I know there will be people who do not understand, but I do not care. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me. You make me want to be better, to build something lasting. I love you, Grishka. Will you marry me?" Tears were streaming down Grishka's green cheeks. "Yes," she said. "Yes, of course, yes." Adrian took her hand, intending to slip the ring onto her finger, but immediately ran into a problem. The ring was far too small. Even Grishka's smallest finger was too thick, her hands made strong by her work and her orc heritage. They both stared at the ring, then at each other, and suddenly they were laughing, the tension breaking into something joyful and ridiculous. "This is a sign," Grishka said, still laughing. "A sign that we should not try to fit into old patterns. We need to make our own. What do you want to do?" Adrian asked. Grishka thought for a moment, then smiled. "Do you have a leather cord?" Adrian did, a length he had been planning to use for something or other. He retrieved it from inside the cabin. Grishka took the ring and threaded it onto the cord, then tied the cord around her neck. The ring settled against her chest, right over her heart. "There," she said. "Your mother's ring close to my heart. Always. This is better than wearing it on my finger. This way it is always with me, a reminder of your love and your mother's blessing." Adrian felt his throat tighten with emotion. "It is perfect. You are perfect." They kissed as the sun dipped below the horizon, sealing their promise to each other. The next day they went to the town council to formally announce their intention to marry. Thomas and the other council members congratulated them warmly, showing no surprise at the union of human and orc. In Crossroads, apparently, such pairings were unusual but not unheard of. "We can have a ceremony in 2 weeks," Thomas told them. "That will give you time to invite anyone you want to attend and prepare whatever traditions you want to include." 2 weeks. It felt both impossibly far away and frighteningly soon. Adrian and Grishka threw themselves into preparations, which mostly consisted of finishing enough repairs on the cabin to make it livable for 2 people, and ensuring Grishka's most urgent commissions were completed. The day before the wedding, Grishka's workshop received a visitor. Adrian was there, helping Grishka organize her tools when a massive orc warrior ducked through the doorway. He was easily 6.5 feet tall, his green skin marked with ritual scars, his tusks large and prominent. He wore leather armor that had seen considerable use, and his hand rested on the hilt of a wicked-looking axe. Adrian's instincts kicked in immediately. He stepped partially in front of Grishka, his own hand moving toward his sword. The orc warrior noticed the movement and laughed, a deep rumbling sound. "Peace, human. I am not here to fight." "Cormac," Grishka said from behind Adrian, her voice shocked. "Is that you?" The warrior's stern face broke into a grin. "Little Grishka, I heard rumors you had made it to Crossroads." "I had to see for myself." "You know him?" Adrian asked, not relaxing his defensive posture. "He is my cousin," Grishka explained. She moved around Adrian and approached the warrior. "Cormac, what are you doing here? I thought you were still with the clan." "I was," Cormac said. His expression sobered. "But things have changed. When the war ended, many of us thought the clans would adapt, would find new ways to live. Instead, the elders cling to the old ways, the old hatreds. They cast out any orc who shows sympathy to humans or suggests peace." He gestured to himself. "So here I am, looking for a new place, and I find my little cousin alive and well." "And getting married tomorrow," Grishka added, a hint of mischief in her voice. Cormac's eyebrows shot up. "Married? To whom?" Grishka took Adrian's hand and pulled him forward. "This is Adrian Vance. He saved my life, brought me here, and asked me to be his wife. Adrian, this is my cousin Cormac, who taught me to track and hunt when I was young." Cormac studied Adrian with an intensity that made him want to squirm. Finally, the big orc spoke. "You are human." "Yes," Adrian said, meeting his gaze steadily. "You fought in the wars." "Yes." "You killed orcs." Adrian did not flinch. "Yes, and I have to live with that, but I am not that person anymore. I am trying to be better. A long moment of silence, then Cormac nodded slowly. "Grishka is my blood. She is dear to me. If you hurt her, human or not, I will hunt you across the world and feed you your own entrails. Are we clear?" "Very clear," Adrian said, "but I have no intention of hurting her. I love her." Cormac looked between them, taking in their joined hands, the way they stood close together, the ring hanging on the cord around Grishka's neck. Something in his expression softened. "Then you have my blessing," he said, "and my protection. Anyone who threatens you threatens my family." Grishka threw herself at Cormac, hugging him fiercely despite the disparity in their sizes. The big warrior hugged her back with surprising gentleness. "Will you stay for the wedding?" Grishka asked. "Please, you are the only family I have left." "I would not miss it," Cormac promised. "Besides, someone needs to make sure this human treats you right." That evening, Adrian, Grishka, and Cormac shared dinner at the inn. Other residents of Crossroads stopped by their table to offer congratulations and meet the imposing newcomer. Cormac told stories about Grishka's childhood that made her blush and laugh in equal measure, and Adrian shared his own tales of his early days as a hopelessly inept soldier. The evening was warm and joyful, full of the easy camaraderie of people who had found their place. Later, as Adrian walked Grishka back to her room, she squeezed his hand. "Thank you for being so gracious with Cormac. I know he can be intimidating." "He loves you," Adrian said simply. "That makes him all right in my book. Besides, I appreciate having someone looking out for you, especially when I cannot be there." They paused outside her door. Tomorrow night she would be staying at the cabin with him, beginning their life together. But tonight they would spend apart, following the tradition of not seeing each other the day of the wedding until the ceremony. "I cannot wait to marry you," Grishka said softly. "I cannot wait either," Adrian replied. He kissed her tenderly. "Sleep well. I will see you tomorrow." The wedding day dawned clear and bright, the autumn air crisp and perfect. The ceremony was to be held in the town square at noon, officiated by Thomas in his capacity as council leader. Adrian spent the morning in a state of nervous excitement, getting ready in his room at the inn with Cormac's assistance. The big orc had appointed himself best man and took the role seriously, helping Adrian shave and dress in the new clothes he had purchased for the occasion. Simple but well-made trousers, a white shirt, and a dark vest. "You clean up acceptably for a human," Cormac judged. "High praise," Adrian said dryly. Cormac's expression turned serious. "I mean what I said yesterday. Grishka has suffered much loss in her life. She deserves happiness. I believe you can give her that. Do not make me regret believing it." "I will spend every day trying to make her happy," Adrian promised. "She is everything to me." Cormac clapped him on the shoulder hard enough to make Adrian stagger. "Good. Now let us go get you married." The town square was already filling with people when they arrived. It seemed like the entire population of Crossroads had turned out for the event. Chairs had been arranged in rows facing a simple wooden arch that someone had decorated with autumn flowers and leaves. The whole scene had a festive air. Adrian took his place beneath the arch, Cormac standing beside him. His heart was hammering in his chest. He scanned the crowd, seeing friendly faces, humans and orcs and dwarves all gathered together. This was what acceptance looked like. This was what peace looked like. Then the crowd quieted, and Adrian looked up to see Grishka emerging from the inn. She was breathtaking. She wore a dress of deep green that matched her skin, embroidered with intricate patterns in gold thread. Her black hair was braided elaborately, woven with small flowers. And there, against her chest, visible above the neckline of her dress, was his mother's ring on its cord, glinting in the sunlight. Their eyes met across the square, and Adrian felt his nervousness melt away. This was right. This was everything. Grishka walked toward him through the parted crowd, her stride confident and sure. When she reached the arch, she took his hands, and Adrian felt complete. Thomas stepped forward and began the ceremony. He spoke about love and commitment, about choosing to build a life together despite differences, about the courage it took to forge a new path. He spoke about Crossroads itself, how the town existed because people had chosen to set aside old hatreds and create something new. Adrian and Grishka stand before us today as a symbol of what is possible, Thomas said. Two people from different worlds, brought together by chance and choosing to stay together through love. They remind us that our differences need not divide us, that we can find common ground, common purpose, common joy. Thomas asked them to speak their vows. Adrian went first, his voice steady and clear. Grishka, when I found you in that barn, I was lost. I had spent years fighting and killing, convinced that the world was divided into us and them, friend and enemy. You showed me I was wrong. You showed me that kindness is stronger than hatred, that love is possible even across the widest divides. You gave me hope when I had none, purpose when I was drifting. I vow to love you, to honor you, to stand beside you in joy and sorrow for all the days of my life. You are my home. Grishka's eyes shimmered with tears as she spoke her own vows. Adrian, you saved my life in every way a person can be saved. You saw me when I was wounded and vulnerable, and you chose compassion over hate. You treated me with kindness when you had every reason not to. You gave me safety, friendship, and love beyond measure. I vow to love you fiercely, to support your dreams, to be your partner in building the life we both deserve. You are my heart. Thomas smiled. By the authority vested in me by the Crossroads Council, I declare you married. Adrian, you may kiss your wife. Adrian pulled Grishka close and kissed her as the crowd erupted in cheers and applause. In that moment, with Grishka in his arms and the sound of celebration around them, Adrian felt truly happy for the first time since before the wars began. The rest of the day passed in a joyful blur. There was a feast in the town square, tables laden with food that represented the various cultures of Crossroads residents. There was music and dancing, though Adrian and Grishka mostly just held each other and swayed, lost in their own world. Cormac gave a boisterous toast that made everyone laugh and made Grishka cry happy tears. The dwarf innkeeper provided ale that flowed freely, and the celebration lasted until well after sunset. Finally, as the stars came out and the crowd began to disperse, Adrian and Grishka made their way to their cabin. Cormac and several others had snuck out during the festivities to prepare it, lighting lanterns and leaving flowers on the table. It glowed welcomingly in the darkness. Adrian carried Grishka over the threshold, both of them laughing, giddy with joy and ale and the sheer impossibility of their happiness. He set her down gently in the main room of their home. "Wife," Adrian said, testing out the word. "Husband," Grishka replied, her tusked smile radiant. They spent their wedding night learning each other fully, tentatively at first and then with growing confidence and passion. They discovered that their differences mattered not at all in the ways that counted, that desire and tenderness transcended species and history. They fell asleep tangled together, exhausted and content, as the first stars of their new life together wheeled overhead. The months that followed were some of the best of Adrian's life. He threw himself into building up the farm, planting winter crops and repairing fences and slowly expanding the cabin to make it more comfortable. Grishka's leatherworking business thrived, her reputation spreading beyond Crossroads to neighboring settlements. They fell into an easy domesticity, sharing meals and chores and quiet evenings by the fire. But it was not without challenges. There were still people, even intolerant crossroads, who viewed their marriage with suspicion or disapproval. A few human residents refused to do business with Adrian because of his orc wife. Some orc travelers who passed through town looked at Grishka with contempt for choosing a human mate. The worst incident came about 4 months after their wedding. Adrian had gone into town to sell some produce from his garden and stopped by Grishka's workshop to walk home with her. He arrived to find her confronting 3 orc males in road-worn leather, their faces hard with anger. "You are a disgrace to your people," one of them was saying to Grishka. "Lying with a human, you sicken me." "My choices are my own," Grishka replied, her voice steady though Adrian could see tension in her shoulders. "I do not answer to you. You answer to the old ways," another orc growled. "You should be cast out, your tusks broken, your name forgotten." Adrian stepped into the workshop, his hand on his sword. "I think you should leave." The 3 orcs turned to him, their expressions hostile. "The pet human," the first one sneered. "Does she keep you on a leash? Last chance," Adrian said quietly. "Leave now and we will forget this happened." The lead orc reached for his weapon, but before the situation could escalate, a familiar deep voice rumbled from the doorway. "Is there a problem here?" Cormac stepped into the workshop, his massive frame blocking the exit. Behind him, Adrian could see several of Crossroads' guards, human and orc alike. The troublemakers looked at Cormac, then at the guards, then back at Adrian and Grishka. Whatever they saw in those combined forces made them reconsider. "This is not over," the lead orc spat, but he and his companions left, pushing past Cormac roughly. After they were gone, Grishka sagged against her work table. Adrian immediately went to her, wrapping her in his arms. "Are you all right?" he asked. "I am fine," Grishka said, but her voice shook slightly. "Just shaken. I knew there would be those who disapproved, but having them confront me like that." "They will not bother you again," Cormac promised. "I will spread the word. Anyone who threatens Grishka threatens me. That will make most think twice." "Thank you," Grishka said to her cousin, "for always looking out for me." "That is what family does," Cormac replied. That night, holding Grishka close in their bed, Adrian made a silent vow. He would protect her from anyone who sought to harm her for their love. He would build a life so full of joy and purpose that the hatred of others could not touch them. He would prove, every single day, that their love was worth any prejudice they faced. As winter came on, Adrian and Grishka settled deeper into their life together. They hosted dinners for friends, including Cormac, who had taken a job as one of Crossroads' guards. They planned expansions to both the farm and the workshop. They talked about the future, about eventually having children and what that would mean, raising a child who would be part human and part orc in a world still learning to accept such unions. One cold evening in late winter, Grishka came home from the workshop with news that made her practically glow with excitement. "I received a commission today," she announced, "from the governor of the Northern Territory. He wants a full set of formal regalia, leather armor decorated with the emblems of all the races in his district. It is the biggest, most prestigious commission I have ever received. If I do this well, it could establish me as one of the premier leatherworkers in the whole region." Adrian swept her up in a hug, spinning her around despite her laughing protests. "That is amazing. I am so proud of you. It will take months," Grishka warned. "I will be working long hours, and I will need to travel to the capital to take measurements and do fittings." "We will manage," Adrian assured her. "This is your dream, Grishka. I will support you however I can." Over the following months, Adrian watched his wife pour herself into the commission. She worked from dawn until late into the night, her skilled hands creating beauty from leather. Adrian helped when he could, running errands, keeping her fed, managing the household while she focused on her craft. There were times when the strain showed. Times when Grishka was exhausted and stressed, when Adrian felt lonely in their bed because she had fallen asleep at her work table again. But they worked through it, communicating openly, supporting each other through the challenges. Finally, after 4 months of intensive work, the regalia was complete. Adrian accompanied Grishka to the capital for the final presentation, wanting to be there for this momentous occasion. The governor was clearly impressed. He examined every piece with a critical eye, testing the fit, admiring the detail work. When he finally looked up, he was smiling. "Exceptional work," he declared. "Truly exceptional. You have a rare gift, Mistress Grishka." The payment he provided was generous, more than enough to fully stock Grishka's workshop with the finest tools and materials. But more valuable than the money was the recommendation he provided, a glowing endorsement that would bring Grishka customers from across the territory. On the journey home, Grishka was quiet, staring out at the passing landscape. "What are you thinking about?" Adrian asked. "About how much my life has changed," Grishka said. "A year ago, I was alone and wounded, dying in an abandoned barn. Now I have a husband I love, a thriving business, a home, a future. Sometimes it feels like a dream I might wake up from." "It is real," Adrian promised. "We made it real, together." Grishka reached up and touched the ring that still hung on the cord around her neck, the silver warm from resting against her heart. "Your mother's ring. It still does not fit my finger, but I think maybe that is perfect. It is a reminder that we do not have to fit into old patterns, old expectations. We can make our own way." "We already have," Adrian said, taking her hand, "and we will keep doing it every day for the rest of our lives." They arrived back in Crossroads as spring was beginning to assert itself, the world coming alive again after winter's sleep. Their cabin looked beautiful in the late afternoon light, smoke rising from the chimney where Adrian had banked the fire before they left. As they dismounted and began unloading their packs, Cormac emerged from the cabin, grinning. "Welcome home," he said. "I kept an eye on the place while you were gone. Everything is in order." "Thank you," Grishka said, hugging her cousin. "You are a good friend as well as family." "There is someone here who wants to see you," Cormac added. "Waiting inside." Adrian and Grishka exchanged curious glances and entered the cabin. Sitting at their table was an elderly orc woman, her green skin weathered with age, her white hair braided in an intricate pattern that reminded Adrian of Grishka's own style. "Grandmother," Grishka said, her voice shocked and trembling. The old woman stood, moving stiffly, her eyes shining with tears. "Grishka, my little one, I had to see for myself that you were alive and well." Grishka crossed the room in 3 strides and embraced her grandmother carefully, mindful of the old woman's frailty. They stood like that for a long moment, both crying until finally Grishka stepped back. "How did you find me? I thought you were still with the clan." "I was," her grandmother said, "but I heard rumors. That you had survived, that you had married a human, that you were living in Crossroads. The elders said I should forget you, that you had betrayed your heritage. But you are my granddaughter. I raised you. I could not abandon you just because you chose love over tradition." She turned to Adrian, studying him with shrewd eyes that reminded him strongly of Grishka. "So you are the human who stole my granddaughter's heart." "I am Adrian," he said, "and I did not steal her heart. She gave it to me freely as I gave her mine." The old woman smiled, showing the worn stumps of her tusks. "A good answer. I am Vraxa. I taught this girl everything she knows about leatherworking. May I see your workshop, child?" Over the following days, Vraxa stayed with them, inspecting Grishka's workshop, meeting the people of Crossroads, getting to know Adrian. She was sharp-tongued and demanding, but Adrian could see the love beneath her stern exterior. She clearly adored Grishka and wanted to assure herself that her granddaughter had chosen well. On the third evening of her visit, after a dinner where Vraxa had told embarrassing stories about Grishka's apprenticeship, the old woman turned to Adrian. "I misjudged humans," she said bluntly. "I thought them all cruel, all filled with hate for orcs. The wars reinforce that belief. But you have shown me I was wrong. You have given my granddaughter a good life, a safe life, a life filled with love and purpose. For that I thank you." "Grishka is the one who gave me those things," Adrian said. "I was lost before I found her. She saved me as much as I saved her." Vraxa nodded approvingly. "You understand. That is good. Love should be mutual, a partnership of equals. I see that in you too." She reached into her bag and pulled out a leather-bound book, worn with age. "This is the book of patterns that has been passed down in our family for 5 generations. Every technique, every design I taught Grishka came from this book. I give it to you now, child, as a wedding gift and a blessing on your union." Grishka accepted the book with trembling hands, tears streaming down her face. "Grandmother, this is your most treasured possession." "And now it is yours," Vraxa said firmly. "You are a master leatherworker now, perhaps greater than I ever was. You have earned this. Use it well. Teach it to your own children someday." That night, after Vraxa had gone to sleep in the guest room they had prepared, Adrian and Grishka lay in bed, talking quietly. "I cannot believe she came," Grishka said. "That she accepted us, gave us her blessing." "She loves you," Adrian said simply. "Love has a way of overcoming prejudice if we let it." "You are very wise for a human," Grishka teased. "I learned it from an orc," Adrian countered, making her laugh. They lay in comfortable silence for a while, then Grishka spoke again. "Adrian, I have been thinking. About children. About starting a family." Adrian's heart leaped. And I think I am ready. If you are, I want to have your children. I want to build that future with you." Adrian kissed her softly. "I want that too, more than anything." They made love that night with a new intentionality, a sense of creating something beyond themselves. And in the months that followed, their wish was granted. Grishka discovered she was pregnant as summer turned to autumn, their second autumn together. The pregnancy was not easy. Grishka suffered from terrible sickness in the early months, and as she grew larger, the physical strain was evident. Adrian devoted himself to caring for her, taking over all the household work, even trying his hand at some of her simpler leatherworking commissions to keep money coming in. Cormac and Vraxa, who had decided to stay in Crossroads permanently, were constant presences, helping however they could. The whole community rallied around them, bringing meals, offering advice, preparing gifts for the coming baby. When Grishka went into labor on a cold winter night, Adrian was terrified. The midwife, a competent human woman named Sarah, tried to reassure him, but he could not shake his fear. Grishka was in pain, and there was nothing he could do to help beyond holding her hand and telling her he loved her. The labor lasted through the night and into the next day. Adrian stayed by Grishka's side the entire time, his own exhaustion nothing compared to what she was enduring. Finally, as the sun was setting on the second day, the baby arrived. The baby's cry filled the cabin, strong and healthy. Sarah cleaned the infant and wrapped it in soft blankets before presenting it to Grishka. "You have a daughter," she announced. Adrian looked down at his child and felt his heart expand impossibly. She was tiny and perfect, with green-tinged skin lighter than Grishka's but darker than his own, small pointed ears, and the tiniest nubs of what would eventually be tusks. She had her mother's amber eyes and a surprising amount of dark hair. She was absolutely beautiful. "She is perfect," Grishka whispered, exhausted but glowing. "Our daughter." "What should we name her?" Adrian asked. They had discussed names, but looking at their daughter's face, the names they had considered all seemed wrong. Then Grishka touched the ring hanging around her neck. "What was your mother's name?" she asked Adrian. "Alara," Adrian said. "Then we should call her Alara," Grishka decided. "After the woman whose love brought us together, after the woman whose ring I wear against my heart." Adrian felt tears running down his face. "Alara, yes, that is perfect." Baby Alara grew quickly, a happy child who brought joy to everyone who met her. She was a bridge between two worlds, accepted by both humans and orcs in Crossroads as a symbol of what was possible when people chose love over hate. Adrian and Grishka raised her with stories from both their heritages, teaching her to be proud of all that she was. She learned leatherworking from her mother and grandmother, farming from her father. She grew up surrounded by love, secure in the knowledge that she belonged. As Alara grew from baby to toddler to child, Adrian and Grishka's life together deepened and matured. They had their disagreements and difficult days, as all couples do, but their foundation of love and respect remained strong. The farm prospered. Grishka's reputation as a leather worker spread across the territory. They added 2 more children to their family. A son they named Thomas after the council leader who had married them, and another daughter they named Vraxa after Grishka's grandmother. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Adrian and Grishka hosted a celebration at their farm. Friends and family filled their expanded home and spilled out into the yard. Cormac was there with his new wife, a human woman who was as fierce as he was. Vraxa was there, older but still sharp, delighting in her great-grandchildren. Thomas and his family attended, along with dozens of others from Crossroads and beyond. As the sun set and lanterns were lit, Adrian found Grishka standing slightly apart from the crowd, watching the festivities with a small smile. "What are you thinking about?" Adrian asked, slipping his arm around her waist. "About that barn," Grishka said. 5 years ago. You could have left me to die, you could have killed me yourself. Instead, you saved me. You gave me everything." "We saved each other," Adrian corrected gently, "and we gave each other everything." Grishka reached up and touched the ring on the cord around her neck, as she often did. It had become her habit, her comfort, a tangible reminder of their love. "Your mother's ring never fit my finger," she said. "But I think it fits perfectly right here against my heart, just like you fit perfectly in my life, just like we fit perfectly together." Adrian kissed her, there in the twilight, surrounded by the life they had built, the family they had created, the love they had chosen. Behind them, their children laughed and played. Around them, their friends celebrated. Above them, the first stars of evening began to appear, ancient and constant. "I love you," Adrian said, "today, tomorrow, and every day after." "I love you too," Grishka replied, "my husband, my heart, my home." And in that moment, surrounded by all they had built together, Adrian felt complete. The journey that had begun in an abandoned barn with a wounded stranger had led him here, to this perfect moment, this perfect life. He had set out carrying his mother's ring and a dying wish, searching for love and purpose. He had found both in the most unexpected place, with the most unexpected person. The ring might not fit Grishka's finger, but it fit perfectly where she wore it, against her heart. And their love, once impossible, once forbidden, now flourished openly, a testament to the power of choosing compassion over hatred, of choosing each other over the expectations of the world. They returned to the celebration hand in hand, ready to dance and laugh and celebrate with the community that had embraced them. Their story was not about tragedy overcome or obstacles defeated. It was simpler and more profound than that. It was about 2 people who found each other in darkness and chose to build a life in the light. It was about love in all its forms, in all its power. And it was a story that would continue through their children and grandchildren, through the generations that would come after. A story that started with a desperate act of compassion and grew into something beautiful and lasting and real. As the music started, and Adrian led Grishka into a dance, their children running circles around them, their friends cheering them on, he knew that his mother would be proud. He had found someone to love, truly and deeply. He had built a life worthy of the gift she had given him. The ring had found its home, worn against Grishka's heart. And Adrian had found his home too, in her arms, in their life together, in the family they had created against all odds. It was enough. It was everything. It was perfect.